Hello and welcome to Stories of Hope. I'm Christine Hotchkiss, your host. Here we talk about grief, hope, faith, forgiveness, transformation, inspiration, and celebration of life in its entirety. And this month, if you already know, is Breast Cancer Awareness, being October. But it's also Domestic Violence Awareness. And domestic violence is around us, whether we are aware of it or not, or if we don't know. Today we're going to share a couple of stories as to it is. I myself, I'm a survivor as a child from domestic violence several years ago, where the resources then are not what they are today. So I'm very glad to have my guests today. And so today I have Lauren.
Hello, hello.
And then I have Raquel, who also comes from the Sojourner Center here in Arizona. And so I'm going to start out with asking Raquel to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have 4 children, single mom, raised them. I'm done. I'm done. I'm also a survivor of domestic violence.
Okay.
I got married at 15.
Wow.
At 22, I was
A full
divorcing and being on my own with my 3 kids. So, it was hard, but, I knew in my heart that that was not a way to live. I chose to go to a domestic violence shelter because I wanted to know why I kept going back to him. And now I am working with victims of domestic violence, 30-something years already. I still have communication with the advocate that helped me when I needed that.
That's wonderful.
She's an awesome person, and I work at Sojourner Center. I've been there for almost 15 years.
Oh,
and I'm loving it. I love the fact that I'm able to pass it on to someone else, that little bit of hope that they can do it, that they can make it on their own.
Perfect. Lauren, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I am from a small town outside of Seattle, Washington. And when I was 19, I moved to Florida, where I got all my education. I've been a massage therapist for 8 years now, and skincare, Reiki master, which is a form of energy healing, and got my master's in Oriental medicine and herbal medicine. And I have been on the pursuit of my dream for 4 years now.
And what is the dream? Because you had shared with me on the phone the other day that you had traveled for 4 months across the U.S.
Yes, yes. So I traveled from Miami, Florida to Seattle, Washington in pursuit for my dream. And turns out that was not where I was meant to be, but I'm still locked in on my vision. And so I moved to the Phoenix area to continue to make that happen. I am absolutely determined to make that happen. And so I've been in the Phoenix area for about 2 months now.
Well, welcome to Arizona. I lived in
Thank
Florida. It's as they say here, it's a dry heat. I'm like, if you sweat, it's still hot.
Right, right.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Lived in Texas and Florida and here. Now that's about, as much heat as you can say. Yeah, it's still hot regardless.
Yep.
Okay, so now you've already talked about domestic violence, as we had shared. I'm going to share a little bit about my story. I am a child survivor of domestic violence. Back in the 70s, I don't believe, I was still a child. There were probably the resources there for my mom, as I have seen as I'm growing older and had a family of my own. It scarred me a bit. I didn't get to be a kid because I had the responsibility as the oldest of 3 that I had to take care of my siblings when my biological father would come home and be drunk and do whatever he thought he was entitled to do, and that was including beat us, beat my mother, kick our dog. So I don't hold on to those, but I know that that's a part of a life that I had lived, and we lived in a shelter, and these are things that I say them now openly, and there are not a lot of people that know this, and I think it's about time, as it says, awareness. We all walk around with a mask on our face, that we're okay, with a smile, or be told you're so strong, and I hear that with me being a bereaved mom. But it's not so much being strong as it is it's the only thing you have. And you can't just sit in a corner and say, well, it's just going to go away. And I'm a fighter. Like you said, you're determined on your dream. I'm determined not to be a part of a society of, or a thing that was going to hold me in one position in my life versus enjoying my entire life with all the good things that are available to me. So being a child of domestic violence, I am going to ask you, as being the actual abuser or be abused, tell me your side of it, because I only know my side of it from being a child.
Well, I come from a large family,
Okay.
and I got married very young, at 15. At 18, I already had 3 kids and going through domestic violence, and it didn't click on me that it was not normal. What was happening in my life, him getting drunk, and me trying to protect my kids, and not have food on the table, and all the, and him isolating me from my own family to keep the control. But in the back of my mind, I always thought, I never saw my dad hit my mom.
Oh.
I've never heard my mom or my dad scream at each other, or I'm sure they had disagreements, but I never did. So I just wanted to find out what's going on. Was it me? Was it me that I was making him do that? And I started analyzing, and I kept leaving. It takes about 7 to 8 times for a victim to realize that you can't change anybody.
No.
Or you can only change yourself, and what life do you want to live? Because I kept going back and forth, and my family would just be there to rescue me, and I would go back, feel comfortable, and he was bringing the chocolates, and he was saying, please forgive me.
I'm sorry, I'll change.
I won't do it again. I was drunk, utilizing, alcohol, the excuse for him to put his hands on me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I need to find out. So the last time when I was really desperate for answers, like, I don't want to keep on going, because then you're going to shame. Like, I need to be an adult because I have my babies around. And the last time he was physically attacking me, and I saw my 4-year-old in a corner and was crying, but not in a cry like whining, in a deep, deep sobbing.
Tears.
Yeah, he can verbalize what was happening, and I'm like, I need to do better for my kids. If he's not there for them, I need to be there for them.
Right.
So I reached out, and I called the operator. We're talking about the 80s, early 80s.
Yeah.
I called the operator. I said, I don't have any money. I have my kids with me, and I don't know where to go. So they had someone from Department of Human Services to come pick me up, and they took me to Greenhouse, which is a shelter for domestic violence.
Okay.
And that's where I met my advocate. And I started learning. Of course, I got in contact with my parents and let them know I'm okay. I needed to find out for myself why I keep going back, knowing that I couldn't change him, no matter how much love I have for him, no matter how much I wanted to work, because this was my family, and I wanted to prove to the world that I had a family. I learned that I could be, my children and I are a family.
Right. With or without the father.
With or without the
Yeah,
father,
yeah.
and normalizing the fact that, I focus on my kids, I'm focused on their growth and how I was going to survive.
That new norm was now being changed.
Correct.
Understood.
And that's a struggle, but it was a good change. And that's something that sometimes a lot of victims, they're like, well, I don't have any money, I don't have any job, he did not let me work. So it's about the control.
Yeah.
They start isolating you, then they start controlling your money.
Or reeling you back in, like you had mentioned. I remember and this is something that, you know, I didn't want to remember, but I do remember now that we talk about it, is my mom kept taking my biological father back. And I remember the flowers, and I remembered certain things. And as a child, you're not supposed to remember the bad things, but when you saw the good and the bad at the same time, you're like, oh, okay. So when you're talking about how many times you have to go back, I witnessed as a child to see those things, and I didn't understand because I didn't know.
Because children don't go to the honeymoon. I mean, there's a cycle, and there's like when they hit you, they explode, and then they go. It goes to the honeymoon stage, where everything is happy. He's, you know, very caring for you, lovingly. So you want to live in that
honeymoon.
In
that was
honeymoon.
there initially.
Children don't live that because they still fearful. They don't experience that.
So Lauren, you're also a child of...
Right.
Okay, so share.
Right, so I wanted to talk about what you had just talked about, how where you saw your child actually like in the corner like that, where it was like crying and sobbing, because that was me. So it's really beautiful to meet you and to have this conversation right now, because that was me. I am a very, very sensitive being. I can walk into a room and I pick up on energy. Like, I'm just a very, very sensitive being, but now I'm able to turn it into my gift instead, right? And to use it to my advantage. But, you know, as a kid, it was like it was just so loud. Like, there was so much yelling. There was so much where, like, my dad would be, you know, like yelling and cussing at my brother, and, you know, all of that, and I would go up and just be like, stop, like crying, like trying to peel him off, and it's like, who are you to a 2-time Vietnam vet?
Oh, and someone so much larger than you.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was always that, what are you gonna do? Like, you can't do anything kind of thing, you know, and so, it was just always so loud. Like, every single night, it was just loud. Like, I would just like be in my room, just like crying, because I just wanted it to go away, but I couldn't. Like, I didn't have power over it, you know. But the beautiful thing about it is that you made that phone call. Like, finally, my mom, she had enough, and she said, you know, like, I have 2 kids that I have to worry about. The courage from a child, that love and that respect and that honor that a child has for their mother for taking care of them is priceless.
Yeah,
like, finally, like you had the courage to do that. Like, a child, like, how can a child thank their mother for that gift? You know, like, it is hard. I can only imagine what that must be like.
Well, and with that being said, just because of my own walk, there are, it may have been that generation, and we had talked about this, it may be the generation where there's a shame and they don't want to acknowledge that actually took place in their life. And there's a lot of division within my own family, and I really think that when we're a child, which is a very short time of our lives, I tell people it's like a slinky. You have that slinky, and it's very small, and everything's condensed, and 10% of that, if that, is we're a child, and those are the years that actually everything is getting put into us as to what's norm, what's acceptable, who loves you, who doesn't, what you should do. The list goes on, and then as we're getting older, that slinky starts unraveling, and then all those things that were squished in there are starting to come to surface and going, what was that? That's not right. And now you're analyzing, thinking, okay, that wasn't right. Kind of with me knowing that wasn't right, but at the time, that was the norm. Even though you're sitting there crying, and you knew that physical wasn't right because you didn't feel it was right, but you didn't understand that there's other lives. As I'd mentioned earlier, you only know what you know until you've been presented something different.
Right.
And as a child, you really don't have that voice, like you said. Who are you to take on, you know, someone much bigger than you? And your dad. You're supposed to have respect for your parents, right?
Right.
And also, a child learns from us as parents.
Yes.
Right.
And so this child, you know, I have boys, and I'm like, I don't want my kids to learn this trait, because children learn from their environment, and they learn from us as parents.
Yeah. And the one thing I would always tell my daughter and my son, and you may have heard this too, and you may have actually said it too, hands are not for hitting, they're for loving. Right?
Yes.
Hands are for loving, not for hitting. To move forward, I had actually attended something a couple weeks back here in the city of Chandler, where there was a survivors and animal domestic violence presentation, I guess. I didn't put everything together here. And they had the table set very pretty. And if anyone sees me, I stole a placemat. I stole this placemat that I was sitting in front of, and this was actually made by a child. And it's, there's a gal that works with the Boys and Girls Club here in Chandler, and I guess there was a group of children that she sat with, and they got to color these, and they're laminated, and I might return it, but and it happened to be purple because purple is
it's
the color
of awareness for domestic violence, but it's 1 month, and I say it should be 12 months of awareness. We need to be aware because home is where we are brought up.
Right.
And it's supposed to be our haven. It's supposed to be our safety.
Yeah.
And if that's not there, then how these children are going to be productive, human beings, in a positive way. And just be in general loving life.
So you work with the Sojourner Center, so we'll be brief as to what they actually do. And I brought this to the attention because you guys have actually paired with an organization called Lost Our Home Pet Rescue.
Yes.
And part of the problem or part of the concerns when there are families that are going through the domestic violence, and I don't know if you had any pets when you were growing up, is you don't want to leave, you want to take care of your kids, but there's pets also involved. I know I grew up with that where I actually had to get rid of 2 pets because we couldn't have them with us.
And I mean, I have worked with victims that like, I'm not leaving my dog, or I'm not leaving my cat because he takes it out on him.
Yes.
If I leave and I remove myself, my dog is gonna get it, and I cannot leave. So we found ourselves early, because I came in 2003, and we didn't have the pet shelter for it. So now we can offer that. We can say we have
no more excuses to not get out.
We have, and it's not an excuse, where they're at, and asking them, we meet you where you're at.
Perfect.
If you're still in the relationship, we have outreach programs where the advocates will come to you. We can meet in a McDonald's, we can meet in the library, and just trying to safety plan, and just giving them that little bit of hope that they can get out. And they can bring their dog. Right now we have 8 kennels for cats and 8 for dogs, and it's within our campus. So we have 35 transitional housing. That means that they went to the crisis shelter, and we have 75 to 80 shelter beds, like for mom and children, and also men. But so they can bring their dog, and they can feel at least that's out of their worries of plates, and then they can focus on them, on how to get out, how to know how to help your children as well.
Sojourner is an actual place where the families can stay there for a temporary housing?
It's crisis, and they can stay 120 days in the crisis, but we also have transitional where, you work towards trying to get work, go back to school, or, just getting to know yourself again, because you lose yourself when you're trying to survive.
Absolutely.
They make you change. Don't wear that. Don't do this. Don't do that. So it's very difficult for you to focus on you.
Right.
Because you're trying to survive. You're in that mode of survival, and you're there for a while. And it's all about you, and how fast you can get out of it, and how long, and what is the price that you're going to pay. Because there's always a price, not monetary, but and I put it to the victims when they come, because I work for Sojourner Center, but my office is at Superior Court, where I can help them get an order of protection. I can help them have it served. I can, if they want to proceed later on with legal decision making, divorce, child support, I give them the information.
Is there a hotline for anyone? Because we're actually being seen who knows where. And so Sojourner is here in Arizona. I don't believe that they have another that they're branched out anywhere else, but is there like a hotline that people call? Like we already know 911, that's everywhere.
Right.
Is there a hotline number
It's
too for anyone?
602-244-0997.
Okay, so if someone's not in the Arizona area, there's something that's
There is, and they can call that number that I gave you, and they'll be able to give them to the domestic violence hotline, where it's anywhere.
okay. The number again?
602-244-0997.
Thank you. You know, the one thing that I've noticed too, when it comes to relationships of being in domestic violence or an unhealthy relationship, and especially as children, we saw that, we thought that was the norm, and then we find ourselves, and this will be a question for you if maybe it's happened to you. I didn't get into a relationship that was of domestic violence of any sort after that, but there are people that grow up and they end up getting into those. Did you happen to come across any relationships in your young years that you would have fallen into that trap to realize that you fell into something you didn't even know was a part of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I got into when I first moved to Florida, I got into a verbal
Verbal is bad, too.
Yeah, a verbally abusive relationship, and that is actually something I've never shared.
Oh, well, you don't. And you know what I tell everybody, just because someone asks you a question does not mean that you have to answer it. So you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We're here. So, yeah, it was very verbally abusive, very much where just the irony of it, where I moved to a completely new state and I was like free to start all over. But I am put back into the same situation. I got put back into the same situation of being like so talked down to and like belittled in a sense.
Okay.
And then finally like being able to be like, no, that's not me, and breaking free.
Good for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good for you. Because, like I said, I didn't have a domestic violence situation like that. But, you know, whether it's domestic violence, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and you already talked about being belittled. Those are abuses as well. They really are.
So part of our program, it's doing support groups, having the women learn what a healthy relationship is, and what, you know, something that is trying to control you, someone that's trying to control you, and how you can be your own self and be happy who you are, and try to find yourself in there. Slowly but surely, there's, hey, I didn't know that I liked that because it was always what he wanted.
Sure.
So his likes were her likes.
Right.
So they start learning about themselves.
And that's what Lauren was just saying about being free, and then getting to that, and you're like, now you're free again, but you took 4 months to go across the country.
Right.
I want to do 4 months. Well, eventually I will. My ultimate dream goal, too, is to travel across the country to be able to interview people such as yourselves, because everyone has a story of some sort, not as dramatic as some. Some have multiple chapters in their lives. They're their stories. But we also have a song that keeps us either singing loud or soft, but we all have that spirit within us. I'm going to be quick on this one. I always want to ask my guests, because we want to talk about ourselves, of course, but we always want to do something that's either, like me, I always want to be a better person than I was the day before. I'm always learning by the conversations that I have with people, or the observations that I'm always, you know, sometimes you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm like, you know, for good, not for bad. I ask questions not to put anyone on the defense ever, ever, ever. That's why I said you never, ever have to answer a question if someone asks you a question. No, that doesn't entail it. So my question, and we'll start with Lauren, since I started with you in the beginning, is what legacy do you want to leave?
The legacy I want to leave behind is more a mind, body, soul understanding within each person, and using your sensitivity, tapping more into your human potential and using that as your gift.
And is that part of the work that you do too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have your own business and that is what you do. And you said it's not Reiki, but it kind of is, but it's energy work.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to let it be known now too, before we run out of time, that if you want to get in touch with either of my guests, Raquel or Lauren, the information will be provided. If not, then you can email me, which also will be provided at the end of the show, if not during the show. Raquel, what legacy do you want to leave?
I want to be able to put a seed of hope.
Love it.
Whenever a woman walks into my office or I bump into someone, to do it with kindness, with respect, and knowing that there's an open door for you. Whenever you want, I'm here. I'm here for you, and I will be with you as long as you need me.
And you've been with Sojourner for how long again?
I was with them the first time. I was with them for 14 years. Wow. Then I went to start working at the Secretary of State's office.
Oh, wow.
And I learned a new way of working with victims of domestic violence as well. And I needed that one-on-one. I needed to be with them. I'm a person that I want to be able to see how you're understanding, or if you're not comprehending what I'm saying, or
scared to even say something that's on their minds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just
Fear.
today, a person came to me and she had a horrible story, and I was just there to absorb it. And as she finished, and she goes, I've never said that to anyone before.
Wow.
So to me that's a blessing, that they feel comfortable enough, and it's a gift.
Absolutely.
That they're giving me.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Everybody can actually touch everybody, and every story has something behind it.
Absolutely.
Not for everybody. Like, I'm a bereaved mother. You have not experienced that, so you wouldn't know my journey. And I have not, we all share, obviously, this one here, but at different levels of domestic violence. And domestic violence is it's something that people still, I think, look the other way, thinking, well, there's a reason. Maybe there was the upbringing, then it was this. And it's like, well, no, like you said, take a stand on yourself. And I tell everybody, today's your day, own it. So you take your life and you own it and decide what's important to you.
Absolutely. And
there's options. There's definitely options.
There's definitely options, and there's ways that if you just have a little hint of, maybe we're there, whether we can meet you in McDonald's, or whether we can meet you at the courts.
Thank you both for coming here and
welcome.
opening yourself up, even though you haven't been asked these questions, and that we can help you. If you have questions, again, you can reach me on the email that we provided. And until then, I wish you well. Thank you.
The preceding program was brought to you by the Holy Spirit Broadcasting Network, HSBN Television.